Okay, welcome back everyone. We're going to carry on from where we left off on last video. Remember, we're diving straight into the code here. At the end, we're going to cover the theory such as what is model view controller. Now let's carry on. Come over to your editor, create a new file, call it app.js, and type Angular module, call it TODO app, give it an empty array, and now type Angular module TODO app dot controller and call it TODO TL and pass it TODO controller. Come down here, create a TODO controller function, give it the variable of scope, add a variable to the scope called TODOs, which is going to equal a list, and let's just put 1, 2, 3 in the list. Save that file, come back to our index. In our body, add this directive ng controller equals TODO ctrl, and then here, make an h1 tag, add a binding expression, and say TODOs. Save that, come to our browser, reload, and it didn't work. At the top, come to ng app, set it equal to our new TODO app, save. Still didn't work, of course, because we have to import our script. So let's add a script source and set it to app.js. Save it, and there we go. Here we can see our list, that is a variable on the scope that is within our controller, which we declared that this body is part of that controller, so therefore we have access to that variable. Now we are making a TODO app here, so for the first step, let's get rid of this. Let's add an input, give it an ng model of new TODO name. Let's just add a p tag here, give it our expression, and bind it to new TODO name. Save, come back here, reload, and it's working. So the reason we are going to do this is because, get rid of that, come back to our app.js, add a new function here. We're going to call scope.create TODO equals an anonymous function. It's going to take no parameters, and here we're going to see a cool usage of the scope binding. We're going to say variable new TODO equals the scope dot new TODO name. Here we can just alert our new TODO, come back to our HTML. Now let's add a new button, create TODO. Here add a ng click directive, and we're going to call our new create TODO function. Save, come over here, reload, add something in the input, create TODO, and there we are. Remember, we are alerting this new TODO, which we're getting from our scope. Our scope has a variable called new TODO name, and our new TODO name is getting its data binded from this input with this directive. So we don't have to pass in the new TODO as a variable to this function. It can just grab it straight from the scope, which is pretty cool. Now next in our TODO app, let's come here and change this. We're going to give it one initial variable, name, make TODOs, and a boolean is completed. Set it to false. Save. Now we're going to come back to our index. We're going to come below our button. Now we're going to have a ordered list. Now let's create a list item. Now we're going to use a very cool directive called repeat, ng repeat equals TODO in TODOs. Now what's going to happen is this entire list item is going to be repeated for every object in this iterable. So let's have our TODO, TODO.name. Let's have a button called complete and another button called delete. Save, come over, there's our first TODO. Now let's implement complete first. So we're going to go ng if which means this element will only be rendered if this condition is met. And the condition is going to be todo dot is complete. So if we reload, there our button disappears because incomplete is false. So we want to revert inverse this. Then another thing we want to do is add ng click. And this is going to take our todo is complete and set it to true. Now when we click it, it disappears. We want to add that same functionality to our delete button without the ng click, because that's not what this is going to be doing. If we mark a task complete, then no operations to do on it. Next, let's implement delete ng click, and we're going to say delete todo and give it the index. Now this index is a microscope, or just a scope, to this todo object. Let's go over to our app.js. Let's create our new delete function. Scope delete todo equals function, takes our index as a parameter, and we are going to say scope dot todos dot splice at index and 1. Save, come back to index, save, reload here, and there it removes our todo. Now we are going super backwards here, but let's now add todos. So we got our create todo button, we got our input, create still just alerts. So let's go back here and change this to scope dot todos dot push, a new object, dictionary object where the name is equal to new todo and is complete is false. Save, come back, reload, and there's our new todo. Can add a bunch of them, delete them, complete them. Last thing I'm going to do is quickly spruce up our code a bit. You can grab the Bootstrap CDN from Bootstrap's website. So I'm going to come to the body and add a terrible inline style of a margin to rem. I don't suggest doing that in production code. Let's come to our button and add a class button primary. And we're going to copy this, come over to our button sound at the bottom here, make our complete a success, and our delete a danger. Save, reload. Well, that looks much nicer. Let's come to our unordered list, add a class of my2. A little bit of margin there. Okay guys, that wraps up this quick tutorial. Here we can see quite a lot of Angular functionality already taking place. We can see the scope in action. We have a controller running. Remember, we haven't explained any theory. This is just practical. This is CTT. We're just coding. At the end, once you've done some Angular coding, then you can go and study, hey, what's actually going on here? Let's test our app. Mark it as complete. Make it to do. We can delete that because we did it.